Well, hello, everybody. This is the December State Technical Committee meeting. Thank you all for joining us. I had the agenda shared there earlier on my screen. Hope everybody got the agenda. We're able to see what was on the screen, but I just have a couple comments before we begin and before I turn it over to John for his opening comments. I did not get my updated agenda to Tammy in time to make the changes. So I'll just say up front that I do not have an hour and 15 minutes worth of material here today. A lot of it is just an update. So that's good news for everybody. And I will be covering a little bit of the EQIP and CSP fund pools, fund allocations, and EQIP CIC. So just a kind of a change there. And a heads up to the other presenters to be ready a little bit earlier this afternoon, unless we get into a lot of questions and those kind of things. So I'll turn it over to John here in just a minute. Then I'll do the overview, some programs updates, and then Tammy Timms, she'll be covering some of the initiatives, RCPP, giving us an update there. Jeff Nichols, our state range management specialist, will be giving us a little bit of an update on our Nebraska Great Plains Grassland initiative. And then FSA has got a couple items they will cover with us on the cost list and migratory birds. Corey King will be joining us again for some wetlands updates. And then at the end, I would like you to start kind of giving some thought. We always like to hear from the partners out there. So at the end of the meeting, feel free to give us any updates that you might have or any comments at the end of our session here today. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to John Wilson, the acting state conservationist. So John, if you're on and ready, take it over.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Wilson. I'm the acting state conservationist here in Nebraska for the next few days anyway. We have the vacancy. It is out. It's closed. It opened and closed back in October. And certainly we are anticipating having someone identified mid to late January to continue to move forward the way Nebraska is moving forward with conservation here. So just wanted to take a few moments. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm only acting through the rest of this week. And then Stacy Riley, the Assistant State for Programs from Oklahoma, will start working and be in the office on Monday to start working as acting state conservationist here in Nebraska. Just wanted to go over a couple of priorities, the agency priorities for fiscal year 2022. And there's just 5 of them, so I'll just go over them. Ensure equity in the delivery and implementation of all NRCS programs and services. Increase assistance for climate smart agriculture and forestry to support producers in building resiliency across their operations. Expand conservation tools and support to address the unique needs of urban farmers and communities nationwide. Cultivate a complete and diverse workforce that has the right tools, technologies, and training to uphold the scientific integrity of NRCS. And 5, leverage innovative partnerships to expand NRCS ability to get conservation on the ground effectively and efficiently. Some of the things that we're doing here in Nebraska, we have we're going to be advertising for a outreach coordinator position, a permanent full-time position, to help us work with folks that we have traditionally not worked with, or at least expand our activities in some of those underserved areas. We also have an urban committee that's led by Carlos Villarreal. He's leading that committee, and so he may be asking some of you to assist us in that. And certainly those activities will help us to address some of the agency priorities for 2022. Certainly, due to COVID restrictions, we are still under that, but the plan is to start opening back up NRCS, but it will certainly be dependent on how COVID, and now we got the Omicron a variant, so that may change things. But right now, the plan is for national leadership to start going back into the offices this month, with the state leadership to start going back into the state offices in January, and fully have the offices fully staffed by mid-March. That is our plan right now, but of course that is subject to change. With that, I see it does say introductions. So I will entertain folks kind of going down the list. I think everyone has the same list. It is in, I guess, maybe it's not in alphabetical order. So how we'll just do this. Let's see. Burdette. I see John Henson. That's how about John Henson go first? You're muted. You're muted, John.
Sorry. Hi, I'm John Hanson, and I'm the president of Nebraska Farmers Union.
Hey, John. Burdette.
Burdette Pining with the grain sorghum and as a producer.
Okay. Okay. Casey.
Hi, I'm with Spring Creek Prairie Audubon Center, filling in for Ed Hubbs. We represent the Tri-County Bird Association too.
Okay. Chandler. Chandler Smith. You're muted. Okay, we'll come back to Chandler. Dan.
I'm Dan Rubores, and I'm with the Lower Loop Natural Resources District out of Ord.
Okay. David. David Potter. Didn't quite hear you, David. Looks like you're unmuted now. But we can't hear you. We'll come back to you, David. Eleanor.
I'm Ellie Nugent with Ducks Unlimited.
Okay. James. James. You're muted. Come back to James. Jana.
Yep, this is Jana.
Jana with FSA.
Yep, Jana
John?
Ingers-Mogg with FSA.
Okay, thank you. John Erickson.
Hi, everyone. John Erickson, Nebraska State Forester.
Okay. Haley. Kaylee Olson.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kaylee Olson. and I'm with a policy associate with the Center for Rural Affairs.
Okay. Corey? You muted, Corey.
Oh, it's me. Sorry. Yeah, I'm Corey King with NRCS here at the state office. I'm the wetlands coordinator.
Kirkston?
Hi, I'm Kirsten Bailey. I am Senior Projects Associate with the Center for Rural Affairs. I work on our farm and community team.
Okay. Doug?
Hi, I'm Doug Klein with FSA.
Matt? Matt Smith?
Hi, I'm Matt Smith. I'm with Platte Lakes Joint Venture.
Nisha?
Hi, I'm Misha Mazurkowitz. I am the environmental manager for the Ponca Tribe of Nebraska.
Lorraine?
Yes, I'm Levane Moore with the Farm Service Agency, working with conservation.
Okay, okay. And Bruce? Bruce? I think you're on stream, Bruce, but you're muted. Bruce? Okay, Chandler. Chandler Smith. David Potter. Okay, I believe that's all that's here. Brad?
John, can
Yes.
you hear me, John?
Yes, I can hear you now.
This is Chandler Schmidt. Sorry about that. I was having a little technical difficulty, but I'm here with the Middle Niobrara NRD in Valentine. So.
Okay, well, thank you, Chandler. Okay, I believe that's everyone. If I missed someone, please let us know.
This is Mike Crosley. I'm with the Santee Sioux Nation. I'm on the phone.
Okay, Mike. Okay, thank you.
Also, Nick Striff with USDA NAS in the Lincoln office.
Okay, Nick.
Albert Trailer, Department of Environment and Energy, Non-Point Source Program.
Okay, Albert.
And Shelley Kelly with the Sand Hills Task Force.
Okay, thanks, Shelley. Marcia?
Marcia,
I'm sorry.
I'm just joining the meeting.
Oh, okay, we're just kind of introducing ourselves.
Okay, Marcia Tromke, I'm here for Central Nebraska Public Power and Irrigation District out in Holdridge.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else that I may have missed? If not, did I hear someone else? Okay. I will turn it back over to you, Brad, to go over your hour and 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you, John. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Can somebody let me know for sure if they're seeing my PowerPoint?
Looks good, Brad.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Okay. Yeah. So like I said, the agenda shows an hour and 15 minutes. I won't need near all of that. I just have a few updates for you for this time around. And probably the main thing will be Eclipse CIC. We got some updated information for that and allocations on Equip. So again, just kind of a quick overview. CSP, that's kind of where we stand currently with the number of contracts in the state, a little over 2,000, and that will be increasing as we obligate more CSP contracts this year. So, but that's where we're at currently. And as far as allocations, we do have our allocations for our programs this year. And for CSP, we're starting with 8.6 million for the CSP Classic, 6.6 million for the CSP Renewal, and those were the where states capped out at, across the country. Some were less, but just to spread it across the nation, that's where we're starting. And then a little bit for Grassland Conservation's Initiative, 50,000. So again, as I always mention, 8.6 million will not cover all of our applications. We currently have 747 applications for CSP Classic, and that's a little bit down from last year. Not sure why exactly. That could increase just a little bit with, some applications may not have been entered into the system yet. But 8.6 million will, we're looking at, again, at probably obligating about 20% of the applications. So we will be doing, some prioritization of those applications to get that whittled down. Renewals, we have 348, which we'll be looking at this year, and 15 GCI applications. So we did have an application deadline for CSP of November 19th, and we shut it off there. The other major change for this year is we're moving to the 23 fund pools this year to align with the DC administrative boundaries, just like EQIP has. Previously, we had the 6 fund pool areas for CSP. It aligned with the previous Farm Bill for CSP, but now we're able to align more closely with the 23 NRDs, just like we do with EQIP. So that's major, and this is a repeat of what I showed you before, but I thought I would just refresh your memory on how we're going to move forward. So every one of these NRDs will have their own ranking tools now, and applicants will compete with other applicants within their NRD instead of the larger areas this year. Quick update on ASAP. We had an early application cutoff for ASAP as well this year in October, and we ended up with 38 applications from new and what was deferred. If we were to fund them all, we'd have a little over 4,000 acres in WRE easements. Our funding level, I didn't show it here, but it's around $3 million. And so we're anticipating 4 to 6 easements that we would be able to make offers on. And so again, it's a fairly competitive process on the easements. We have one new ALE application this year for about 3,350 acres, and that's up in the northwest part of the state, up around in Sioux and Dawes County. Thought I would cover the GARC rates and the major change over the past couple of years with our compensation. We previously, you might remember, we were using GARC rates on every application across the state, where the applicant would then know, what they were going to get paid up front. Due to a lack of sales and some of the issues we've had with market analysis processes that we go through, we are now going to do an appraisal on every application that we intend to move forward on. So the entire state, we will use appraisals now to come up with the value. And we did have to set a rate cap within the state. So regardless of the appraisal, we have a not to exceed rate on irrigated cropland of $9,535 and a not to exceed rate on all other land uses of $5,000. And with all of our appraisals this past year, we were well under those numbers, but in the case that an appraisal would come in over that, they would be capped at those numbers. I would also mention that the appraisals are reduced, a reduction of the fair market value across the state, and the reasons for this is for the retained use the landowner has on those acres, and so there's a 20% reduction all the way down to a 10% reduction of those appraisals. So a producer would not get 100% of the appraised value. They would be reduced by these percentages. So currently, we're moving forward on 3 applications, 2.3 million appraised acquisition costs, and currently working to get those obligated and moving forward. An update on the floodplain easements, going clear back to the 2019 floods. And this is review as well, just an update. But as you may recall, I think we started with about 26 applications, 21 were eligible initially. Since then, 10 have canceled out or they were found to be ineligible. Some of these applicants found that they were able to get their land restored and are now cropping it again. So we ended up with 8 offers have been accepted. We're working on. We have 3 more that are pending, and we'll be putting easements on about 1,320 acres. So all of that will be right at $5 million on floodplain easements when that's all said and done. We also have, moving forward, we have one new or one ale application that it's not a new one. It's one we've been working on 6,200 acres. So we're currently working to get those funds obligated, get all the processes done to make that happen. That'll be a $1.4 million federal share. And this project is up along the Dismal River, just west of the Nebraska forest. So as a reminder, we take applications year round. We continue to have interest, and we'll take those applications as they come in. We did have an application cutoff of October 15th this year, but emphasize if there is interest, we will take their application at any time. And again, we're using the appraisals to get determine the acquisition prices. Okay, so on the EQIP, just a snapshot of where we sit with EQIP as of today. Have 2,400 active contracts on 983,000 acres. So, like I said, I wanted to, the main topic of the day is EQIP conservation incentive contracts. You may recall last year we had EQIP CIC all built and developed and ready to roll out, and then that was put on hold for various reasons, and it was just moved to a pilot. So that has gone through some editing and a little bit of tweaking, but at the end of the day, it's still pretty much the same program. I'll try to point out a couple of the differences, but again, a quick review from before. We identify high priority areas. We identify the priority resource concerns that we're going to treat. We identify relevant land uses, and we'll select incentive practices. And as before, EQIP CIC is intended to be a higher level of implementation and management, and on just a producer can offer just a portion of their operation. It doesn't have to be the same, but the intent is to be a stepping stone from EQIP to CSP. So a producer might want to enroll their entire operation at a future date. So again, Producers, they have to address at least one priority resource concern that we identify. There are annual payments, there's practice payments, and the contract length now must be 5 years. It's set at 5 years. This is one change from last year where there was an option to be from 5 to 10 year contracts. They are now a set 5-year contract. The incentive, there's two types of payments. There's practice payments and then there's annual payments. And I'll talk about those a little bit more in just a minute. There's a contract payment limit of $200,000 for a CSE contract for the person or legal entity. Some business types, like general partnerships, as an example, could go up to a contract limit of $400,000, and that payment limitation cannot be waived, and that hasn't changed from previous. We are required to reserve 5% of our EQIP allocation, or 200,000. So we fit under the 5% here in Nebraska. And we could set aside even more, up to 20%, if we chose to do that. This year, we're going to stay at the 5%. And then we have the flexibility to roll unused funds back to the EQIP general fund. So this is kind of a short notice rollout this year, and so the good news is if we do not get enough interest or applications, we can roll those funds back that we reserved into the general fund. So some of the requirements, we have to establish high priority areas. Mentioned we can identify up to 3 priority resource concerns for each land use. And then we have to identify which practices qualify for this program. So going back to what we had built last year or last spring, we had decided to go ahead and focus on soil health, at least initially with EQIP CIC, and to increase the soil health in the state and to get some more interest from producers and more participation, so that they might want to pursue going to CSP. So we're trying to keep it simple up front. The land uses that we had identified, we plan to move forward with are crop, pasture, and range. And the priority resource concern being soil quality limitations is how we're going to set this up. The adjustments over the course of the summer has been, there is now more of a focus on climate smart ag and forestry and drought mitigation practices. So there have been 32 management practices identified, which we will have to choose from, and 5 SEMAs. And SEMAs are not required to be scheduled, but they can be encouraged. A management practice can be scheduled for 5 years, if practical for the operation, or if a management practice is scheduled later in the contract, say the 3rd year, then they would have to apply that the 3rd, 4th, and 5th year. So I anticipated there would be a question on what's a SEMA, and so maybe in a future state tech meeting we can cover changes to our conservation activity plans. That's been reworked and restructured. So part of our conservation activity plans and the use of our technical service providers, now one section is the conservation evaluation and monitoring activities, which we can schedule into a contract now. And this is just to assist the producer from the planning and monitoring and management aspects. So it includes assessment, monitoring, record keeping, assessing the effectiveness and those kind of things. Examples of SEMAs which would be in effect for soil health would be 216 soil health testing, 217 soil health and source testing for nutrient management, and SEMA 218 carbon sequestration. and greenhouse gas mitigation assessment. So I know this is a little bit hard to read. Hopefully you can get a copy of the PowerPoint, or I can send them out. But this is the list of available incentive practices that we have. These are management practices. There's 32 management practices and 5 SEMAs at the bottom. So all of our soil health practices are available through these 32 management practices available. So so just an example of how this might work would be we may select in a contract management practices of cover crop, conservation crop rotation, and then do some residue management. And then I mentioned the 3 SEMAs, which would also work with how we're setting this up. So just a sample of how a schedule might look for a producer. You could have in year 1, you would have a cover crop. Year 2, he could schedule, and then in the first year also schedule the soil health testing SEMA. The second and third year and fourth year just have the cover crop scheduled, and then in the 5th year do the cover crop, and then have another year of the soil health testing. So that's just an example of how a contract might look through Eclipse CIC and the practices. Just one example. I'll touch on the high priority areas. Again, we must have high priority areas that cover the entire state, and that's kind of a key part of our discussion here. We could have several priority areas, and I'll use this example. You've seen it before. If the rectangle would be the entire state, we could have separate high priority areas within the state, and then have another high priority area and management practices, which would cover the rest of the state. And that's just one example. Again, going back to what we had set up this spring, we decided to just have one priority area, make it statewide for FY 2022. And so the entire state would be eligible on the 3 land uses: cropland, grassland, and rangeland. And so so that anybody in the state anywhere would be eligible to apply. So what's next on Eclipse CIC? We're currently in the process of meeting, and we will be selecting our practices, which practices we're going to offer in that, and then building ranking tools. And so I would just offer to anyone here that if you have any thoughts or input, to give me a call, and we can set up a Teams call or other. We're not planning on having any separate specific Teams conferences on this, because the turnaround is very tight. We just got the thumbs up or the go ahead 2 weeks ago to roll Eclipse CIC out, and then we are required to announce a sign up no later than December 30th, and so we will be looking at the best dates to do that. So the sign up period would be sometime after January 1st, but we will have to make that soon enough so we can implement and obligate contracts. I didn't put the date here, but we must have the contracts fully, completely obligated in August. So it's going to be a fairly quick turnaround to do that. So we'll be doing the announcement and sign up, taking applications, ranking them, getting them approved, and then try to get the contracts obligated in July ahead of the deadline. So then just another review, the other incentive that we have going on, the source water protection, we're rolling that out. And as a reminder, we made no changes to the priority areas for FY22. And again, the legend doesn't show up here, so I'll just say the red boxes are the wellhead protection areas. Those are all high priority areas. The crosshatched areas are the water quantity management areas, and then the yellow areas are the phase 2 through 4 groundwater management areas, and those are medium priority. So this worked very well in FY21 with, we're required to set aside 10% of our funds. So we made no changes to the priority areas for this year. We can go back and take a look at our priority areas every year, and if we want to make adjustments, this year we didn't. And so we're currently batching those applications, and we'll be doing the assessments and rankings very soon. Again, the practices which we selected, those didn't change. Some we do have an option to have a higher payment rate, and those have the asterisk here. Again, this is a review. I'm not going to go through it in entire detail. Equip high priority practices. I want to touch on that again. Again, we were able to establish high priority practices in the state. We wouldn't have to. We could set a maximum of 10 practices as a high priority practices, and we did. And this is a list of those moving forward. And again, these are intended to be practices which are underutilized, which we see as important to the state. And so we have moved these to a higher payment rate in the state. So equip fund pools, the allocations, again, the source water protection, we've got a mandatory 10% of our funds we must allocate to that. The wildlife initiative, at 10% of our funding goes to that. Historically underserved, 10%. Equip CIC, which I mentioned previously, we have a mandatory 5% of our funds go to equip conservation incentive contracts, and 50% of all funds, equip general, must go to livestock related practices. So our statewide fund pools, just a list. We have an advanced cover crop initiative this year. We have the Nebraska Great Plains Grassland Initiative, and this is what Jeff will be giving us a little update here in a few minutes. This should where we're at with that. We continue with the Working Lands for Wildlife initiative up in the Sand Hills, and then our long time, our season high tunnels, organic energy, our CAP plans, animal feeding operations, tribal, have been our initiatives for several years running. And then, as I mentioned in previous meetings, we are now required to set aside some funds for potential disasters in the states. So we did that. And so we set aside some money. And if there is a disaster situation in the state, then we can request additional funds to be matched. These funds would be matched with additional national funds for disasters. So we're currently working on plans for a wildfire initiative. As many of you know, we've had several extensive fires, wildfires on the Panhandle. So we're currently making plans to set up an initiative, a wildfire initiative out there, which will utilize some of those funds. So when we get to the allocation, this year our initial equip allocations a little over $25 million. So just doing the math down the list, the 10% for historically, 10% for source water. We set aside $2.5 million for each one of those. Our wildlife is also required to set aside 10%. This year, we are going to utilize our wildlife funds to fund our Nebraska Great Plains Grassland Initiative applications for this year. So we had discussed allocating 1.2 million from the Wildlife Fund, move it to the Nebraska Great Plains Grassland Initiative for this year, which then leaves a 1.35 just for wildlife. So thank you to everyone who has been involved with getting this set up and worked out. And so we will have some money for each one of these initiatives, and we will be working through that this year to get the right applications and get those obligated. The EQIP CIC at 5%, and then the other initiatives that we had talked about setting aside, the Advanced Cover Crop Initiative, 300,000 goes into that. AFO, we have been putting $1 million into that every year pretty regularly, and we could use more in the AFOs, but that's where we're at. We put $1 million in disaster, like I said, we're currently working on the wildfires to come up with an initiative, and that's where that money will come from. Conservation activity plans, the Sand Hills Working Lands for Wildlife, 100,000 is what we've been putting into that. And then High Tunnels, Organic, Tribal, and Energy is where we have traditionally, that's the number we start with generally. And High Tunnels, the interest level in High Tunnels continues to be high, and we've utilized 100,000 and more pretty much every year. So then on top of our general and part of the 25.5, we get separate allocations for NWQI, and we have 3 projects in the state. We're moving forward with Brazil, Big Sandy, and Turkey. And our allocation this year between the 3 is 1.7 million. There is a suggested breakdown between those 3. I didn't put it on here, but we are able to move funds between these 3 projects, and we typically do. But that's where we start. Our Water Smart program, our relationship with the Bureau of Reclamation on projects. Moving forward, we'll have the Upper Republican project and the Middle Republican project. And we had 250,000 for the Upper Republican and 524 for the Middle Republican. And we're working on, we have an application cutoff coming up soon for the Middle Republican. So we can set separate application cutoff dates for NWQI and Water Smart if we need to, and we will as necessary. We still continue to have the Forest Service, the Joint Chiefs project in the 3 NRDs, Upper Niobrara White, Middle Niobrara, and Upper Loop. And we got $500,000 for that project this year. So a recap, November 19th was our application cutoff date for all the fund pools, except disaster. We will be announcing an application sign up for the wildfires. RCPP can be a separate sign up cutoff dates and NWQI. So we will make announcements as needed for those. And then the Advanced Cover Crop Initiative, we have a February 18th application cutoff date for that initiative, and that's out there. So with that, just to wrap it up, another reminder, again, in FY22, we plan to have local work group meetings. We'll be getting the direction out on the timing of those soon, but we've had a lot of good feedback over the last year or two that local work group meetings in January and February are too soon to really give any good feedback, and I understand that. But again, the reason we have the first one early is to provide feedback for the practice payment schedule process, which begins in January of every year. And there isn't anything which would prevent us or any local work group from having additional meetings later in the year. And we may even encourage meetings later in the year, depending on how things work out. So just want to get everybody, keep that on your calendar, your thoughts that, again, we will be asking for input. Do we have the right fund pools, input on ranking tools, screening tools? We need to get that input from the local work groups. So with that, I'll just, I'm not able to see if there's any questions in the chat. I'll quit sharing here. Maybe I can, but if there's any questions, go ahead and verbally let me know, or just go ahead and enter a question in the chat. Okay, no questions?
I don't see anything in the chat either, Brad.
All right, okay, and we'll have an opportunity at the end as well. So, okay, with that, I'll turn it over to Tammy for the RCPP and partner updates. So, Tammy, go ahead.
Okay, I'll set up here for a second. You should be able to see my screen, Brad, correct?
Yep, sure can.
All right, well, good afternoon. What's that? Good?
Yeah, I just said looks good. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. So good afternoon, everybody. Glad to see everybody here that's with us today. I am Tammy Timms, Programs Initiatives Coordinator for NRCS, and just going to give you a quick update on the partnership programs. First, we have the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. Also, we call it just the RCPP program. Farm Bill 14 projects, we have a few of those still lingering around, but two of the projects involve watersheds. The Wahoo Creek Water Quality Sites 26 and 27 was an agreement we started in 2017 with our lead partner, Lower Platte North NRD, as a PL 566 flood control structure. RCPP funds at 1.5 million. So just a quick update on the status of that project. Earlier there had been a cultural resource consideration, but we've moved on. It's not an issue. The National Water Management Center, who does the review and comments on all watershed plans, they provided comments, and the final draft of these compiled comments have been viewed by the public. So now it's going to go forward to agency final review, where the comments will then be documented in the plan environmental assessment. And then it'll be sent to headquarters for program authorization. So we don't see or don't expect to have any other roadblocks for that project. Project 1712, the Papillion Creek Site, Watershed Plan 1 Dam. That was a program agreement that we started in 2018 with lead partner Papio Missouri River NRD. Again, that was a PL 566 flood control structure as well, with 4.46 million of RCPP funds. And that one right now is at the National Water Management Center. We've received comments actually from them. There's a consultant that is working on modeling and economics to address some of the comments that the National Water Management Center had. Should have an idea of the benefits by the end of the month, and then a final review by NRCS will then happen. But again, before we send it off to HQ for final approval, the draft plan will be sent out for public and agency review for a 30-day period. Our project 1564, Divots in the Pivots, was an agreement in 2017 with our lead partner, Upper Big Blue NRD. This was a classic RCPP project with $1.8 million. The goal is just restoring wetlands by enrolling lands in ASEP and ALE, or ASEP ALE and ASEP WRE, as well as upgrading irrigation systems to variable rate irrigation through EQIP contracts. So Status of that hasn't changed since we last met in September as far as EQIP contracts and as far as the number of agreements and parcels closed. So we're just waiting for one parcel to be closed. So we're hoping that will happen before too long, but more than likely we're going to need to extend this RCPP project out 1 year with a 1 year no cost extension. Our project 1966, again, this was one with Farm Bill 18 money, Resilient Futures for Nebraska Soils. We also call it the Soil Carbon Project. Was an agreement that we started in 2021 with the lead partner, the Nature Conservancy. This was a classic RCPP as well, with RCPP funds of $4.3 million. The goal is to enroll 100,000 acres over a 5-year period, storing 150,000 metric tons of carbon, preventing 375,000 tons of soil erosion, and then just linking those producers to carbon credit markets if they're interested. So we had our first sign up with the producers as far as what was typically called EQIP contracts, where we now call them land management contracts because we use a different software system than what we did on the previous Farm Bills RCPPs. So we ended up with around 40 to 45 applications. 20 of those actually have been developed into contracts for $545,000. This around over 7,000 acres, but actually it was around calculations from TNC is around 21,000 acres by the time we combine the whole area that was affected. We have one contract that had crop rotation, 5 that included no-till, and 19 that include cover crops. So producers have the option to choose crop rotation and or no-till and or cover crop. So a lot of them, again, 19 out of 20 had cover crops, and then so some of the others decided to have crop rotation, and 5 of them included no-till as well. So we are prepping up for another sign up this year for fiscal year 22. Our goals, roughly they're going to be around 50 new contracts. We're hoping roughly around $700,000 of FA, still to be decided depending on what type of turnout we get with the application sign up. But the deadline for the sign up that's been announced and posted is December 17th. We just had a project training for our NRCS field offices this past Tuesday. So we're hoping everybody's on board and ready to go. RCPP project 2135. This one's the Cropland Cover for Soil Health and Wildlife, also known as the Cropland Cover Initiative. It was an agreement that we signed in, again, last year or this year, 2021, with our lead partner, Nebraska Game and Parks. It's a classic RCPP, but it's a renewal. So they had 700,000 last time, well, the previous 5 years. So now this next 5 years, we've got another 700,000 to spend. The goal is to plant 7,000 acres of multi-species cover crop, allowing grazing on 75% of the acres and leaving so 25% for the wildlife. So we're hoping that we can really get this project off and on the ground here this winter. We have 6 priority counties: the Hayes, Frontier, Hitchcock, Red Willow, Furnace, and Harlan counties. We're shooting for around 25 contracts with around $150,000 in FA, but again, that's to be decided depending on the number of applications that we see. And the practices that are going to be in those contracts will be 472 access control and 340 cover crop. Again, we've announced that there will be an application sign-up deadline of December 30th. That's been posted. And depending again on how that sign-up goes, we are planning a second sign-up to be around that April 1st timeline. We actually have some project training coming up for our NRCS offices and partners on December 7th. So it'll be next Tuesday. Project 2271, the Ogallala Aquifer and Platte River Recovery Projects. We're still under negotiations with that agreement. Just have a few minor details that we need to fix, and otherwise it's ready to go. Our lead partner is with Central Platte NRD 82 is a classic RCPP renewal where we're getting an additional $2.7 million for another 5 years. The goal for this project is continue reduction of water consumption and depletions by converting irrigation to dry land or to efficient irrigation methods and technologies. So using irrigation practices like we did for EQIP, and now it's going to be done through our CPP's land management contracts. So the goal for this one is, get that project agreement signed and done, and then start working on a sign up in the spring of 2022. This project includes the areas of Twin Platte and Central Platte NRDs. Our next project is project number 2173 with the Nebraska Forest Service, called the Nebraska Forest Restoration Partnership. We had that project signed into agreement here in October. This one is an alternative funding arrangement, RCPP, which means that the Nebraska Forest is pretty much going to be in charge of administering all of the financial assistance dollars. And so they're working with 16 other natural resource districts across the state to implement the project and basically market it out there across the state. The goal is to restore 5% of the oak cottonwood forest, renovate 5% declining windbreaks, and recover around 10% lost windbreak cover. So this is a project that's got a lot of interest, and know people are really ready to go with this. So we're working on the supplemental agreement. The supplemental agreement is actually the reimbursement agreement that we have with our partners. And there'll be several different types of supplemental agreements to this one, because we have to have one for financial assistance, and then we also have to have another one for technical assistance. So our goal is to get this one kicked off here this winter, and working with the Nebraska Forest Service, hopefully we will see that happen. Our another Farm Bill 18 project is 2434 Platte and Platte Wetland Protection, and that's with Ducks Unlimited. And we're still working on that project agreement. I think we're getting fairly close on getting that one negotiated. This one is a classic RCPP. It is a new one with funds of $1.3 million. The goals are 640 acres in entity-held easements with restoration and conservation land type easements, and looking at 150 acres of protected wetland and restored wetlands. So I had mentioned earlier in a couple of previous state tech meetings that this Farm Bill 18 RCPP has just posed some new challenges for us, mostly in the form of software, but also in the policy. But on the software side of things, for NRCS, we're no longer using the typical ProTrack system that we use for EQIP and CSP, but actually are trying to use Conservation Desktop to be our contracting platform. And we're just seeing some challenges with the development of the software to work the way we need it to. And so, but we're getting through it. I had mentioned that earlier that we had the Nature Conservancy project for the soil carbon project, and that's where we had 20 contracts written through the Conservation Desktop platform, and at the last minute fiscal year deadline, but everybody was resilient in getting done what we needed to, so we worked through it. But we know that for fiscal year 22, we're still using Conservation Desktop. It's still going to be a manually entered software system, whereas ProTrack's a lot of automation is going on in the background, but with CD it doesn't happen. So we have to put in all the eligibilities and a lot of other information into it manually. Just a couple notes on RCPP, the fiscal year 2021 alternative funding arrangement opportunity that was announced back in May. The national selections were announced in around October, and unfortunately Nebraska did not have any of those. Upcoming national funding opportunities, there should be a classic and an AFA coming out simultaneously. They had talked about getting it out in September, then talked about October, then they talked about November. Well, here we are in December, and we still don't know when that announcement will come. We're just waiting on departmental approval before that announcement can be made. EQIP Water Smart, I'm just going to briefly touch this one because Brad already has. This just shows a comparison in the middle Republican NRD. Last year we had $481,000 written into 15 contracts, and then this year, as Brad had mentioned, we've got $524,000 to spend. In the upper Republican NRD, last year we had $18,000 written into one contract, and here this year we got $250,000 to spend. And then with NWQI, again, just information that Brad has, but I've got the breakdown. So for the Bazille Creek, which is the part of an implementation phase, last year we had over $1 million worth of obligations, but here in fiscal year 22, we have $928,000. In Turkey Creek, also in the implementation phase, last year we spent $93,000. Fiscal year 22, we're looking at a budget of $760,000. In the Big Sandy area, last year we had $100,000 worth of obligations, and in fiscal year 22, we're looking at spending $454,000. And then Wahoo Creek still remains to be in planning phases, so no money has been obligated to that project yet. Joint Chiefs Landscape Restoration Program. Just a little more detail beyond what Brad had offered was like, this kind of just shows you the breakdown because it is a 3-year project. In 2020, we had 5 contracts for $331,000. We covered 3,500 acres. In 2021, we had 5 contracts that used up $508,000, covering 6,749 acres. Practices included forest restoration, brush management, woody debris removal, fuel break. And then in 2022, we don't know for sure what we'll have for sign up, but as Brad had mentioned, and an edit to your PowerPoints, $500,000 is what has been allocated. So that's the end of that 3-year project. So we'll have to decide, the groups will have to decide if they want to reapply for funds for another 3 years or not. They had 2 tours in the Pine Ridge area this last summer, and that really verified that the producers are interested in continuing this project. And as you can see here, I listed some of the partners that are participating: the U.S. Forest Service, the Nebraska Forest Service, Department of Transportation, Nebraska Game and Parks, and others. So again, we really appreciate everybody's joint efforts in this project. Okay, and I just wanted to give a quick little note on CRP, because I've been handling some of the program administration on that program as well for NRCS. And all I wanted to do is cover just that NRCS is in an agreement with the Farm Service Agency through a memorandum of understanding of providing technical assistance for CRP. And that was a signed document back in October of 2019. So basically what it says is that NRCS is going to handle the technical assistance and handling status reviews. And for sure, these 3 different types of reviews. One will be done at CRP practice installation. So that's basically when the producer's bringing in the paperwork saying, this is what I planted, this is what's been seeded out there. So it should not require site visits for most of those types of contracts. However, if there's been some structural engineering work, like say grass waterway, we'll probably need to do a site visit on those. That's potentially over 3,000 contracts, give or take. CRP practice establishment. This is when it's done, it's performed not later than 2 years after installation, just to determine that approved cover is fully established. And based on our records, we've got 9,062 fields that we're going to have to review this year. And then CRP contract expiration, we perform these not earlier than 3 years before the contract expiration to determine that the practice maintenance continues to be implemented. Our list is using expiring contracts expiring in 2022 and in 2023. And it looks like there's 7,683 fields that will need to be reviewed. Status reviews are done for other reasons as well. Like if there's a maintenance issue or management issue that we need to go look at, we do those as well. But I just wanted to note here too that we have partners that we have helping us out that are so appreciated. And I just wanted to take the time to make sure to note that it's not just NRCS or FSA, but it's also our partners and the like Farm Bill biologists and some of the NRD folks that are helping us out too. So that is very much appreciated. And so then just to wrap mine up, I just want to wish everybody happy holidays and a Merry Christmas. And if you have any other questions too, just let me know.
Okay, any questions for Tammy? Either verbally, just unmute and ask, or you can put a question in the chat. Okay, not seeing or hearing any. Thank you, Tammy, for that. And okay, so moving on, the next up is Jeff Nichols. Jeff, if you're here and ready to go, to give an update on the Nebraska Great Plains Grassland Initiative. So Jeff, if you're ready, I'll just hand it over.
Well, thank you, Brad. Is everybody able to hear me? Okay.
Yeah, you're coming through good.
Okay, good. All right, let me share my screen. Okay, is that showing up for everybody?
Yep, it's showing up. Thanks, Jeff.
Good enough. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for having me this afternoon. What I want to do is give everyone a brief update on what's going on with the Nebraska Great Plains Grassland Initiative. I'll do a quick recap of what that's all about in case we've got anybody participating this afternoon that has not heard previous discussions on that. And then I'll get into some of the highlights of what's going on program-wise for NRCS recently with this initiative. So the Great Plains Grassland Initiative is a part of a greater effort that has been going on. A couple of years ago, former state conservationist Craig Derrickson entered into a cooperative agreement with the University of Nebraska to hire Associate Professor Drock Twidwell as a science advisor for NRCS in Nebraska here to help us come up with some scientific solutions and a path forward to address some of the woody encroachment issues that are occurring on our grazing lands. And as part of that effort, Drock works with the Working Lands for Wildlife initiative, which is more of a nationwide initiative. But one of the things that he's worked then on is a 4-state initiative, called this Great Plains Grassland Initiative. And that includes the states of Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, and South Dakota. And so these 4 states are all kind of headed in a common direction with this initiative, revolving around addressing the woody encroachment issue. Most specifically would be eastern red cedar on the grasslands. And so these states are at different points in their rollout of this. I think Kansas is about a year ahead of us as they rolled it out last year. And then we started back in August and had kind of a statewide teams meeting just to kind of roll out the philosophy behind this to our employees here with NRCS in Nebraska. And I believe Oklahoma is rolling theirs out this week. And then Kansas or South Dakota is not too far behind. They've had an initial meeting and then they're still working on getting their initial rollout going. But anyway, we had an initial meeting, like I said, back in August, and then I'll talk about some of the other things we've done since. But so this whole initiative, it's a landowner driven initiative in that a lot of what information that Dr. Twidwell has gathered has been spawned from communication with landowner groups around the state and throughout the Great Plains. But he's used this information along with some of his research that his team has done to come up with a science-informed process for addressing this woody encroachment. And then, of course, NRCS is supporting this effort in the fact that they hired him as a science advisor and his team. So this is a big priority for Nebraska NRCS, and we're looking forward to how things are going to roll out going forward. go. Okay, so one of the things that's come out of his work is he has developed this guide for reducing woody encroachment on grasslands. And this guide is not even out yet in print. It's out in digital format, but I think he's had something like 19,000 orders or requests for printed copies of this all throughout the Great Plains and from many other states. But basically it's a new method of a science-informed method of how we're going to look at looking at the woody encroachment issues on our grasslands, and hopefully give us a method that will work a little bit better than the shotgun approach that we've been typically doing of, you know, going to areas where there's a tree problem and just trying to address individual patches here and there. It's going to be something that we look at trying to first and foremost protect the grasslands that are still left, and then look at treating areas that are beginning to be encroached from there. But anyway, so he's got this new guide that came out, and we had a series of 4 in the field workshops in October that took place in each of the 4 target areas where we're trying to work this first fiscal year in Nebraska. And the combination of those 4 trainings, I believe we trained 91 people in terms of NRCS employees and partner employees that are working within those areas on what this guide, how it can be used in the field, and what these different levels of encroachment look like in the field. And so if we look at this graphic in the center of this slide, basically this shows us what the different stages of woody encroachment are. Everything from intact grassland where there is no seed contamination and no trees occurring at all, which would be signified by the green. And then we get up into the yellow, and this is the phase of seed dispersal and recruitment. And then we move into the areas of red, which is where the trees are expanding, which means that trees have reached an age of at least, you know, 5 to 6 years old, or roughly 5 to 6 feet in height, in which they start producing viable seed. And so that's kind of the expansion phase. And then the thing we don't want to get towards, of course, is where we've made a complete transition from a grassland ecosystem over to a woodland ecosystem, and that would be signified by, you know, the furthest on the left-hand side of the gray area. Now, a lot of projects that we've been doing in the past with NRCS would be just, you know, the random landowner that comes in the door and asks for some help with treatment of his woody encroachment or his cedar trees. And so we start working with him on his project, and oftentimes that is, you know, when they come in our office, they're already well along into that expansion phase of encroachment, if not the woodland transition phase, before they come in and ask for help. And so what they found is, through this guide, if you look at that graphic there in the upper right hand corner of that slide, we want to use a risk and vulnerability model for assessing where we should be working in the range, or working on these issues of encroachment. And so basically with these trainings that were held back in October, he showed us, you know, what we should be looking for in terms of exposure and sensitivity of the areas. Exposure has to do with, you know, is there seed being distributed across that site. And so by looking at those 2 aspects, we can give you know, our project area a risk assessment, and then that risk assessment combined with the adaptive capacity, which has to do with, you know, what practices can be used and what is the capacity of that landowner to implement those practices to reverse this encroachment process or to have some positive outcomes with it. And those two things together then would give us a vulnerability rating for whether or not that project is something that, you know, we can be successful and have a win at, or if it's something that, you know, if it's a high risk project and we go ahead and we treat things that are in that expansion or woody transition phase, there, if the adaptive capacity is not there to address the re-encroachment that will occur, then, you know, we're in a high risk and a high vulnerability area, and it maybe isn't a project we should be working on. So when we run it through that risk and vulnerability assessment, we realize that the areas that we should be working are more over in that dispersal and recruitment area and trying to tie those into intact grasslands. And we can be a lot more successful that way, getting on this problem earlier, and we can hold back this problem to a lot greater extent if we attack things during those phases of encroachment rather than waiting until we're in those further encroached expansion and transition. So that's in a nutshell what the new approach is that we're trying to take from a technical standpoint for NRCS and many of our partners. So for 2022, we've designated 4 areas across Nebraska that are target areas for this Great Plains Grassland Initiative. And those areas are the Verdigris Brazil up there in the northeast corner of the state, the Sand Hills, the Lusk Canyons in southeast Lincoln County, and Dawson and Frontier a little bit, and then the southwest mixed grass prairies in southwest Nebraska. And the reason these 4 areas were selected first is most of them have intact grasslands, or they all have intact grasslands still in place. They also have some core areas that have already had some good success by landowner groups and partners that are doing good projects in those areas. So they're areas where we can demonstrate some early and significant success. And then, you know, there are wildlife populations in those areas that can benefit significantly from expanding the existing work that's been done in those areas. And so that is why those 4 areas were selected here in this initial year. But we hope to get this same strategy implemented statewide and have everybody utilizing the same thought process for how we're addressing woody encroachment going forward into the future. For the EQIP program, we had our first cutoff for applications was November 19th this year. And we've just put out the feelers to the field offices or to the DCs to get an idea of how many applications came in for specifically this initiative or that'll fit in this initiative. And once we have that tallied up, which we do not yet, we'll know whether or not we need to potentially have a second sign up and you know, do a little more outreach and publicizing what's available through this initiative. But what they decided to do for this first year is they took $1.2 million out of the existing wildlife or the Wildlife Initiative Fund here in Nebraska. And since these projects are all going to benefit wildlife, this was a logical place to get at least an initial start with some funding for this initiative. And so that's what was done. The applications that we receive, the early screening criteria for these applications, and then also the ranking criteria is going to favor applications that are anchored into intact grasslands or grasslands that are part of an established core where some good work has already been done to turn back the encroachment process in some significant areas. And then also applications that involve multiple landowners. Not that all those landowners will be included within one application, but a multi-landowner effort, on a larger landscape scale to try to address this problem. If the application is part of a multi-landowner effort, then it will receive some favor in that ranking criteria. And then also we're wanting to promote, working with our partners. There's a lot of the partners across the state that are also fully engaged in this Great Plains Grassland initiative and have bought into the scientific approach to it, and they are anxious to help out and contribute in a lot of areas where they can to getting this woody encroachment turned around on our grasslands. And so we want to favor applications that are working cooperatively with partners. As far as practices that will be emphasized through EQIP this year, prescribed burning is a primary one, and the reason that practice is one that we really want to promote through this Great Plains Grassland initiative is because it is the one tool in our toolbox that treats multiple phases of that encroachment process. It does a good job if you run fire across the land. It treats the seed dispersal stage, the early recruitment stage, and the other stages on up all the way through the woody transition. So prescribed burning is a favored practice, and if people are willing and able to utilize that, they will gain some favor in that ranking process as well. And then, of course, goes along with that is the prescribed grazing and the deferment payments that will help to build the fine fuel to conduct prescribed burns. The third thing that will be available is the brush management. And there's various levels of payment that'll be available, all the way from, these real light infestation levels of small trees, the 1 and 2 footers that are scattered around and just getting going out there, all the way up through some real heavy infestation levels that we could utilize as brush management practices to control the trees. The fourth thing that's new this year that we're going to try is this pest management practice. And the pest management practice, it's an integrated approach using the PAMS approach of pest management. The PAMS acronym stands for Prevent, Avoidance, Monitor, and Suppress. And what this will entail is we wanted this to be a carrot to get some of these landowners out there that have, these real early encroachment stages that the trees really aren't impacting their production so much at this point, but so they aren't really doing anything about it when they're at that stage. And we thought that by putting this per acre payment out there for a 3-year basis, that maybe we could entice some of these people that have that stage of encroachment into entering into a program and getting on their encroachment problems a little bit earlier. And so that really falls in line with what the guidance, that scientific approach that was developed in that guide by Dr. Twidwell. So the one thing about this particular pest management practice is, since it's been documented, that the only place that you're going to have a problem with encroachment of cedar trees, especially, or any invasive species for that matter, is where there's a seed source. So if people want to take the pest management practice, they'll be required to remove all seed producing trees within the project area. So that will be one of the criteria for being able to take that practice. And there's some different caveats around where that seed source is adjoining or next to these project areas that we're going to be working out and managing as we implement the program. But I think those are some things that will get worked out as we go along. So just to reemphasize that prescribed burning is a really desired practice, and we want to try to, cooperate with our partners and ramp up our resources and our capabilities here in Nebraska to be able to help lead producers in the direction of being able to utilize this practice. And so we want to increase the acres to have meaningful impact, because you can impact such a broader amount of acres with this practice, as opposed to some of the mechanical means and different things like that. So we also want to increase the acceptance of this practice with landowners, improve the cultural will that they have to use this. And, we're looking forward to working with our partners in this effort. Also, promote and encourage landowner prescribed burn associations. There's several very good ones started around the state that are doing some really good work, and there's some new ones springing up all the time. So we just want to encourage and promote these, because ultimately, these landowners working together to solve a common problem or for a common cause is really the best solution to solving the woody encroachment problem. And then we want to work towards evaluating, the allocation of dollars that we're spending on this particular resource concern, because it really is the greatest threat that we have to our grassland systems and our overall livestock production systems in our state. And we just really need to be thinking about what we need to do to allocate dollars and resources towards this problem in the upcoming years. And so part of that's going to be increasing our capacity among NRCS employees for prescribed burning knowledge and experience. And so we're going to be working on that, and then trying to, work and do a good job with our partner cooperation and look for opportunities and avenues where we can complement each other and all tackling this problem together. So that's basically what I have for my presentation today. If there's any other questions, I'd be glad to try to entertain.
Okay, any questions for Jeff? Okay, got a hand up from Walter. Walt, go ahead. You can you unmute and?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Walt Shocked. I have a question. In the next 5-year period or whatever term you're looking at and evaluating the project, how many acres are you able to treat, do you think?
Jeff, are you still with us? I see you're kind of froze up.
If he's not, Brad, I could answer that or take a
Well,
shot at it if that's okay.
I can also try to go get him because my camera's working, even though his isn't.
Okay.
So.
Okay, Rich. Yeah, Rich, go ahead.
Well, this is Rich Nelson, and Jeff and I are working collectively on trying to lead this project. And I would say, and right before this call, we were working on a strategic plan document that'll kind of accompany this, Walt. And so I would say as of today, we don't have acreage identified, but we're in the process of trying to figure that out. And some of that will also be a little bit contingent on funding, not only from us, but from other partners, opportunities for future RCPP projects, just to name one example. And then also just how this sort of strategy sort of permeates not only what we're going to do in those 4 geographic areas, but the strategy we're going to take elsewhere in the state. So that's a really gray answer, and I apologize for that, Walt, but I think we'll be sort of fleshing that out in the next couple months here as we work on that strategic plan.
Thanks, Rich.
Okay, Britt, I see your hands up.
Yeah, Brad, I just wanted to add what Rich said. Walt, we won't probably know for sure how many acres we can do. It's really going to come down to how the applications come in from the producer. If the applications come in and the bulk of those are burning. On larger ranches, we can probably do a lot of acres. I don't have that number on the tip of my tongue, but if we're working, if a lot of the applicants still come in with heavier cedar infestation that will require some brush management in addition to burning because the trees are maybe too large in some places, then that will bring down the number of acres, due to the cost per acre. So I think we're just going to have to a little bit see how the applicants come in and determine, how much it's costing per acre, and then we can do some better projections.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions for Jeff? Okay, seeing none. Walt, did you have anything else? I see your hand still up. I assume maybe you didn't take your hand down, maybe. Okay. All right. Well, again, we'll have a chance at the end for any wrap-up questions if anybody has it. So thanks, Jeff, and good questions. Next up is FSA, Clear 30 cost list, and update on migratory birds. And so, Doug, I see you on there. I'll just turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Brad. Today we've got some information we want to share with the Clear 30 cost list, the docket for what we're going to use for that program as we move forward, and then also have some update on our migratory bird safe project that we will be starting a sign-up period next week. That, so we want to give an update on that also. Now, part of what we'll be doing today with this Clear 30 cost list review, our state committeeman, our appointed state committeeman, Roy Stoltenberg, is joined us also, and so he's going to be listening. And if he has any questions, because we're also going to take this opportunity to use this as his review of and hopefully approval, that we'd be able to then consider that we have taken this list to our committee, been reviewed. He's heard all of the discussion that we have from the state tech committee, and then based on that would still be able to give us his indication of whether he's going to approve or disapprove, and we would then have that ready to roll to use for our Clear 30 assignment or applications during our sign up period. So that's how we're going to use this today. So I'm going to turn that over to Jana Ingerson-Laws as the expert on the Clear 30 list review.
All right, thank you, Doug. My name is Jana Ingerson-Laws, Conservation Specialist at the Nebraska State FSA office. I do want to say thank you, Doug. He's retiring. Doug will be retiring at the end of the month. So after 37 years, time to hang up the hat. So I think he announced that on last month's committee, but in case somebody missed it, thanks, Doug, for all you've done. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And with that, I am going to go ahead and proceed with our topics. I'm going to touch base on the Clear 30 program, and Rich may chime in also on this, and then we'll toss it to Levain for migratory bird. Okay, so Clear 30 stands for Clean Lake Estuaries and Rivers. This is a pilot program that began back in 2020, and at that point it was limited to the Chesapeake Bay, Great Lakes states, and kind of when they shut everything down for CRP at the beginning of this year, they decided to go ahead and expand this project because they thought it was a good project and might as well expand it nationwide. So now any part of the United States is eligible for Clear 30 is what it's called. This is only available to existing expiring CRP water quality benefiting practices, and it gives them the opportunity to re-enroll into a 30-year CRP contract, which is something new to CRP. We've always had 10 to 15-year contracts, and this program is going to give an opportunity to go into a 30-year continuous CRP contract. The sign up we just got through started June 14th and went through August 6th. but we expect this to be part of our continuous sign up at least through this farm bill. Things change, you know, every year, but should go through this current farm bill. The next slide is a list of our practices that are authorized. These are all considered clear practices. So CP8A would be our grass waterways. 15A would be contour grass strips. 15B are contour grass strips on terraces. CP21 would be our filter strips. 22 are our riparian buffers. CP23 are wetland restorations on floodplains, and 23A, wetland restoration on a non-floodplain, plus CP29, marginal pastureland wildlife habitat buffers. CP30 are the wetland buffers. Then 31 would be bottomland timber establishment on wetlands. And there's also CP37, which is duck nesting habitat. We don't have that in Nebraska, so we won't really be utilizing that component, but it is authorized under Clear 30. So this slide gives us an overview of kind of what's involved with Clear 30 payments. SIP or PIP, which are signing incentives or practice incentives, are not authorized for Clear 30. A producer cannot get cost share because this is under our new farm bill. Cost share for management was pretty much taken away under the 18 farm bill. But what they're doing is authorizing maintenance payments. So a producer is able to get a maintenance payment on this 30-year contract. The soil rental rates are also calculated just like any other CRP on the 3 predominant soil types, and it includes our SPI adjustments. We have to do a reduction because of farm bill provisions to 90%, but we also have a 10% inflationary factor included, so it kind of balances itself out. There's also the new climate smart incentives that are applicable for clear practices. Clear practices get a water quality incentive of 20%. I think one of the biggest points is that a Clear 30 contract is going to get an adjustment of 27.5% to count for that contract being a 30-year contract. It's just an automatic 27.5% jump on rental rate. But we do still have to max out. Continuous CRP caps out at $300 an acre. So some monitoring and maintenance notes on these Clear 30 contracts. NRCS will go out every 3 years and conduct site visits. What they're going to do, though, is if there's anything that needs done as far as maintenance is concerned, every 3 years we can modify that conservation plan and schedule maintenance each time they go out. So that's a little different than regular CRP contracts where we go out maybe 3 times or even only 2 times on a contract. This is required to go out every 3 years, do a site visit, see if we need maintenance, and we can modify that CPO to include a maintenance activity into it. And maintenance could include practice establishment or reestablishment, whatever activities might be needed to maintain that practice. Traditional, what we usually call mid-contract management activities like burns, herbicide applications, etc., could be included, and any operation and maintenance activities that NRCS determines might be needed. Alrighty, Clear 30 has another kind of new option to CRP also. This policy for Clear 30 is going to give producers 2 options for doing their maintenance. Normally, we just tell producers they have to do their maintenance into the 10 to 15-year contract, and we pay them directly for the cost share on CRP. Clear 30 is giving them the option of either doing the maintenance themselves. In that case, FSA is going to issue that maintenance payment directly to the participant, and that payment rate is a 75% rate. The second option is that FSA would enter into an agreement or contract with a third-party vendor who would perform the needed maintenance activities on site. And then FSA would directly issue the maintenance payment to that vendor, and the payment rate is at 100%. So there are 2 options, and the producer has to know, decide what option they want to take when they put the offer in. So from what National has said in the pilot projects, most producers did pick option 1 just to do it themselves and receive that payment directly. I know in Nebraska, 2021, we ended up with about 6 Clear 30 contracts throughout the state. And when we ran reports out of those, all but 1 chose to do option 1 and do the work themselves. And the main reason we're here today is the maintenance payment rates. So according to our policy, these need to be established by the FSA State Committee in consultation with NRCS for all Clear 30 maintenance activities to be used within the state. And we need to take them through State Technical Committee. With that, I am going to bring up my docket here and we'll show you what we have come up with for our maintenance rates. What we basically did when we came up with this docket was NRCS and us sat down. We used the regular CRP docket that we already had in place that we use for continuous CRP, and we filtered through it and decided, you know, what kind of components do we need for these Clear 30 practices. And so we could cut some of the practices out that we knew only apply to CRP grasslands or might apply only to pollinators. So we kind of dug in and filtered through that and went through the tech codes and decided what might be used out on these Clear 30 practices that might be needed as maintenance over the 3 years. And so we've got through, I don't know, Rich, do you want to go through these at all or point out some important parts on the docket?
Well, Jana, I think we could give kind of an overview of the types of things we did, and then, you know, as opposed to arduously going through that, if that would work, and then determine whether there's any questions resulting from that. There are certain practices that we use, and a perfect example would be we establish vegetative cover on all these practices. And over time, that vegetative cover may evolve in a way or degrade in a way that it needs interseeded, upgraded, that type of thing. And so each of these practices has that aspect of it that's included. What would it take to kind of overhaul or upgrade that stand? There are other instances, grass waterways is a classic example, that practice just silts in over time. It's not intended to last 30 years. And so we've made sure to include things like sediment removal and reshaping of grass waterways, or erosion points on a filter strip, for example, that need fixed in order for that to function properly. And so again, those components have been built into this as well. And then lastly, I would say there's, you know, what I would refer to as sort of true maintenance. Some of these practices are eligible for fence, for example, filter strips and riparian forest buffers. CRP can pay for fence to exclude that area from adjoining grazing land and that type of thing. And again, fence needs maintenance over a period of time. And so we've tried to come up with numbers on a linear foot basis, if you will. Or if we have extensive flooding and it causes some erosion of a certain feature that needs a head cut fixed, that type of thing, then we've built that into our components. And then lastly, I would just comment that there is the sort of ongoing management type practices, prescribed burning. We might have herbicide application for certain circumstances where an invasive plant, smooth brome, reed canary, might invade a site, and we're trying to suppress that. So I think that's a kind of a rough overview of the types of things we did. Frankly, most of the components that are in here, I would say probably a good 75% already existed. And then we had to add a few unique things like doing maintenance on existing fence or fixing erosion in pinpoint areas on a given practice.
Yep. Thanks, Rich. That's kind of the good overview of what's on there without digging into every single component.
So, Jana, I don't know if this is a good time to pause and kind of see if there's any questions about the cost list before we jump into SAFE. Just because we know we're going to try to, or at least the state committee, FSA state committee, is going to try to take some action or comments, question or comments or feedback on this particular approach. And then we could go from there.
Yep. Thanks, Rich. So we'll open it up if there's any questions, comments on the docket. or you could throw a chat in the chat box too. I don't think I see anything in there right now.
I don't see any either.
No, I'm not seeing anything in the chat
Okay.
either.
It's
One
that.
last comment I'll make as we deliberate this. The beautiful thing about CRP cost list, they're more flexible, if you will, than how we address some of our program related cost lists within NRCS programs. And so if we find a glaring error, we can often figure out a way to fix that or make an addition as needed as we move along the process in a given fiscal year. And then the other comment I would make is, we had a handful of signups this year in Nebraska, and I think that's positive given that we didn't really know much about the practice. We hadn't had it before. We haven't had an opportunity to sort of inform producers that have contracts up for renewal and re-enrollment, kind of what the pros and cons are, what the options are that they have in front of them. So we're hopeful we'll get some additional contracts in coming years.
Yep. I think it's a great program. I think it got thrown in there with a lot of changes with CRP this year. And so I hope the sign up gets a little stronger because it seems like a really good program. I think producers kind of might balk at 30 years, but there's a lot of good incentives right up front, especially with cost share being taken away for management. This is a good way to be able to get maintenance payments that you won't be able to get in a 10 to 15 year contract. So it's a good new option, and we'll kind of see how it goes in the next few years and the level of interest in it. All right, I'm not seeing any questions, so I am gonna let Levane take over on migratory bird.
All right. Thank you, Jana. Again, my name is Levane Moore, and I work in the Nebraska State Office with the Conservation Program, along with Doug and Jana. Kind of want to bring to you our migratory bird safe, and jump to the next slide, Jana. Kind of want to give you a background of, we've started this back in 2014. We had it back then under working with Playa Lake Joint Venture and Rainwater Basin Joint Venture. We had to send in our proposal. We did that through the national office in January of 17, and it was a Kansas and Nebraska program together, and it still is today. But we were allocated 10,000 acres in Nebraska, as well as Kansas had 10,000 acres. In February of 17 is when we finally were approved to go ahead and take signups. And under that signup, we took 1,172 acres. After that sign up, or after that year, in 17, then we had to it was put on hold. And then with the 2018 Farm Bill, they allowed us to go ahead and submit another proposal if we want to go forward with our migratory bird safe, or what we want to do. Actually, all of our upland bird safe as well. But under the migratory bird safe, it gave us an opportunity to look back and see what did we have under the migratory bird safe that we initiated in 14 that we can make better in 18. So under this proposal, I think it's a better proposal because we kind of looked at the landscape and how that worked last time to this time. So I think this sign up, or this safe, and how we're presenting this safe to you is going to be a better opportunity for farmers to get their offer accepted, because we're splitting it into 3 different areas. So what the migratory bird, we named it now Migratory Bird Butterflies Pollinator Safe. And it's a project designed to provide private landowners a market-based financial incentive to restore their playa wetlands. We don't really have a program out there that could help them, or even a big incentive, because it's really costly to put this land into a conservation program. So I think by migratory bird safe, we give them that opportunity, and you'll see as we go through what those opportunities are. But like I said, we broke it down into 3 playa areas across Nebraska, and those areas are Central Table Playas, the Rainwater Basin, and the Southwest Playas. I think that's kind of So back in 2018, we modified it. I just said that, but they took away the acreage allocation from the 17 or the 2014 Farm Bill to the 2018 Farm Bill. But we are kept to the 25.5 million acre statutory cap of CRP acres. So we still have to meet that. So these are going to be, that'll be monitored by our national office. Again, we broke it down into those 3 project areas, and here's the map of those 3 project areas that that producers can go ahead and offer submit offers in. So the land that's under those 3 project areas in the green are eligible to be offered into this program. Next slide. And here are our 42 counties that are under those 3 project areas that are eligible to be offered into the migratory bird safe. And how does sign up work? Kind of going to go through the program details of sign up and what a producer needs to do. It's the offers can be submitted at any time because this is considered a continuous sign up. But it's a little different than our normal regular continuous signups because we're going to do batching periods. We're going to allow the farmers to basically give us their rental rates, and then we're going to do 2 batch periods per year. The first batch period will end February 18th of 2022. So all the offers that we have submitted under this program will be ranked at that time after February 18th, and then will be determined by the national office if they were accepted or not. Before I go on further, I should have said we are going to, nowhere in this PowerPoint did we put when the sign up is going to start because we didn't have a date until recently, and I forgot to add it into the slide. So December 16th, which is Monday, we'll start taking signups under this program. So that will be announced. We haven't pushed out any of our announcements yet. We're kind of waiting for our national office to give us the green light, but December 6th should be our starting sign up day. What the producer needs to meet in order to be eligible for land eligibility criteria, it has to be the playa hydrology must be restored to that full extent possible, and this is determined by NRCS. They must remove the sedimentation, fill those concentrated pits, and fill within that hydric soil footprint. Eligible land also is only for new land being offered. We can't re-enroll, take an offer that was in CRP, so it's only new land that is eligible. They still have to meet that cropping history, planting history of 4 out of 6 years, 2012 through 2017. 51% of their offer has to be within the project area, and it has to be located outside the 100-year floodplain and is a playa lake. And our marginal pasture land is not eligible under this program. Contract durations are anywhere from 10 to 15 years. The size requirements, the maximum enrollment per tract is 160 acres, and the minimum offer is 2 acres for the entire offer. The amount of adjacent upland acres is limited to acres required to provide that protective buffer to the cropped wetland. So the minimum buffer is 120 feet and has to have a ratio of 4:1 and cannot exceed that 4:1 ratio. Annual rental amount for the duration of the contract is determined by that landowner. The landowner is going to decide what they want to submit their offer as. Normally our regular continuous offers are based on the 3 predominant soils, but under this program, the landowner decides what rental rate they want to submit to be ranked and then decided by the national office. And what they're going to look at and what we'll provide to them is the NAS dryland and irrigated cash rental rate. That is what they're going to determine their offer rate by each playa cluster. So every one of those playa clusters aren't going to be categorized as one irrigated dryland. It's going to be specific to the area. So it's going to help those areas have a better opportunity to be ranked and accepted. Safe officers will compete for enrollment on a basis of the index that reflects offer amount along with the wetland extent and also aquifer conditions. So they're going to look at 3 criteria when the national office goes and ranks those offers that are submitted under migratory bird safe. Like I said, it's going to be a competitive ranking based on offer bid amounts. The landowner must submit an offer could submit an offer up to the NAS irrigated rental rate or lower. The lower the offer amount, the higher their overall index value and the more likely their offer will be accepted. No more than 50% of the offers will be accepted during a batch period. So each time we'll be only taking 50% of the offers that are submitted. Continuous sign up with batching period cutoffs. The first cutoff, as I stated, was February 18th of 2022. And the second cutoff batch period, we do not have that set yet. National will be setting that for us, and that'll be at a later date. Right now, we only have the one set date for the first cutoff, which is this February 18th of 2022. And here is each of those areas, the basin. Here's the rainwater basin area, the counties that are involved in that basin. And if you look at the chart to the right, it lists your county. And then in the middle column is the NAS dryland cash rental rate. And then on to the right side is the irrigated rental rate. So if you look at Adams County, a producer could offer their land anywhere from $128 to $257 an acre. It's really up to that landowner what they want to do. And we'll be visiting with them as well. I mean, they can take that high rental rate. We're not going to discourage them and see how the ranking goes. And if they get accepted or not, we don't know. We're still going to have it capped at that 300. But as you see there is no rental rates, irrigated rental rates higher than 300. And then I think the next two, here's the next one. This is the Central Table Playas. And we have the 5 counties associated to that playa, and then the dryland and irrigated rental rates that they can bid on. And then our Southwest playa, the counties listed for that area with their irrigated rental rates and their dryland rental rates, that they can focus on and think about what they want to bid and when they're submitting their offer. And payments for this program consist of the annual rental payment. Like I said, it's going to be based on the landowner making that decision on what their annual rental payment will be. And if they're accepted under the ranking process, then that's the rental rate they'll have. The other things that we'll provide for assistance would be their cost share at 50% to establish that cover. They'll get a one-time practice incentive payment, which is 50% of the actual cost to install that CRP practice. 40% will be paid up front, and the other 10% will be paid 5 years down the road when that cover is established. A one-time signing incentive will be paid, and that is calculated using the 32.5% times the first full year of your annual rental payment. I think that's all. I just kind of wanted to bring it to your attention that this is a new program that one of our SAFE projects that we did get pushed out, going to get pushed out and start doing a sign up on. The other upland bird safe, we are still working with the national office, and we are hopeful that we will be able to resubmit our proposal for that safe and start sign up for that as well. But we have not taken any action on that right now. But we are hopeful that the national office will let us resubmit the upland bird safe now that they moved the upland bird safe from general to continuous CRP. And that's all I had. If there's any questions, we'll entertain any questions you have. Otherwise, we'll push it back to you, Brad.
Okay, any questions for Doug, Levain, or Jana?
I don't see any.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
All right, so next up is a wetlands update from Corey King. Corey, are you okay? There you are. I'll just go ahead and turn it over to you, Corey.
All right, very good. Thanks, Brad. Let me share my screen here. There we go. Can everyone see my screen all right?
Yep, it looks good.
All right, excellent. All right. So as we kind of introduced earlier, my name is Corey King. I am the State Wetlands Coordinator for compliance. Go through a quick overview here of kind of what we've been up to this last fiscal year and things we've been working on. We're now up to 17 dedicated wetland staff, including 4 compliance specialists, 9 wetland biologists, and 3 soil scientists. And with that number, we actually hired 7 new team members during fiscal year 21, which is an unusually large number of hires for us on the wetlands team. And it's been a challenge to say the least with having all the COVID restrictions to get folks trained up, but we've done as much as we possibly can on that regard. And it's been a challenge, but we have been working as much as we can to get new folks to the field and get exposed to all the different wetland systems that we have here in Nebraska. And with that, we continue to receive field support from our resource soil scientists as well. They play a vital role in helping us with soils investigations of wetlands in particular. All right, on here, just a little bit more recap here. So for fiscal year 21, the team completed 1,906 wetland determinations across the entire state of Nebraska. We hosted a phase 2 wetland training in Lincoln. We were able to use the folks, the ecologists and biologists from the CNTSC in Fort Worth. That's Darren Manti and Lee Davis came up to help us put on that training for all those new wetland staff members that we hired over the last year. We also did updates to our state offsite method, and we also updated the indicators for farmed wetlands that recently. And if some of you all may recall, I did a presentation on the farmed wetland indicators earlier this year. Okay, just show a graph here. So this is kind of just a 4-year breakdown of the wetland team's performance and wetlands in general here in wetland compliance workload here in Nebraska. As you can see, we've been fairly steady. We typically have been receiving between 2,100 and 2,500 requests a year, give or take. And then we've been completing somewhere in the ballpark of between 1,900 and 2,500 or so determinations a year. That workload just continues to go from year to year. And we also note that our incomplete total did come up a little bit in fiscal year 21. That's mainly attributed though to having so many new folks on the team that we weren't quite going up at full capacity yet. But I anticipate that fiscal year 22, this number will come back down to where it was in 2020 and perhaps hopefully even lower than that. But I guess the main take home point from the graph here is we continue to see a pretty high workload for wetland compliance. And we don't see that. It doesn't appear to be slowing down anytime soon. The hot spots around the state have shifted a little bit. Traditionally, the eastern third of the state or so has traditionally been the hot spot for wetland requests from producers. But we're starting to see that some of our workload is shifting more towards the central part of the state. As some of those tile contractors are moving west, the workload is following them. All right. Here. So for fiscal year 22 now, our kind of goals are to obviously continue to manage our high wetland compliance workload. We're one of the few kind of divisions, areas of NRCS that we do not rely upon program money, and we do not generate our own workload. All of our workload is generated through producer requests. And so that's kind of a unique aspect of the wetland team's workload. We also anticipate rolling out new wetland compliance training for our field offices. And with that, we'll also be rolling out PJW, which stands for Potential Jurisdictional Waters Guidance for staff. We had a new guidance come out from National, came out in August of 2020, and we are still in the process of implementing that. We're finally to the stage where we can start rolling that out to staff and intend to start using that. Essentially, I'll just give a very brief rundown on what this entails. Essentially, we now have a new icon at our disposal that we can put on a wetland determination map that would indicate something that is a potential jurisdictional water. So something that falls under waters of the U.S. that would be under the Army Corps jurisdiction rather than USDA jurisdiction. The most obvious examples of this are, the major rivers like the Missouri River or the Platte River, Elkhorn River. Those types of things, when they show up on a map, it's more appropriate for us to give them that PJW icon than it is to delineate it as a wetland. And of course, we will be looking for new training opportunities for all of our new staff. Hopefully, some of these COVID restrictions are loosened somewhat for us, and we're able to get more staff together and out and about to do more trainings in person. With that, that's really all I had today. Are there any questions related to wetland compliance?
Okay, any questions for Corey on wetland compliance? Go ahead and you can put a question in the chat or just unmute and ask. Okay, I'm not seeing any. So thank you, Corey, for that. All right. Well, at this time, like I mentioned before, we'd like to give an opportunity for any of you out there to give us any updates or any announcements or comments that you might have. And I would just open it up, either just go ahead and unmute and speak or raise your hand. If you look up in the upper taskbar, you'll see a hand and a smiley face. You can just click on that and raise your hand and we'll call on you. Or like I said, just go ahead and unmute and speak. Would be now's the time. Thank you. Okay. Nick, go ahead.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Nick Strick with USDA NAS. I work out of the office here in Lincoln. Just wanted to update, since we kind of have a lot of NRCS people on today. NAS is going to be doing a survey this coming spring, starting in March. It's called the Conservation Practices Adoption Motivation Survey. It's kind of a long name. It's called CPAMS. We're doing it for NRCS, and I just wanted to let you know that as we start to develop the training, we'll be sure to kind of try and keep you all involved and either let you attend the trainings to see it so you can kind of see how we're training our enumerators to do that survey. We don't have the sample size yet for Nebraska, but we do know there are two versions, a crops version and a livestock version. And the national sample sizes for those surveys are somewhere along the lines of 20,000 in the crop practices one, and something about 14,000, I think, in the livestock practices one. So we expect a good chunk of work for Nebraska. So data collection for that begins in mid-March and goes through mid-May. So just an FYI, and once I get more information, I'll be sure to share it with the state office. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Okay, anybody else? Okay, seeing none or hearing none, I'd just let everybody know, you'll feel free to reach out to us at any time, any follow-up questions. So that brings us to wrap up and any final questions. So I'll just go ahead and John, if you're still on and available, I'll turn it back to you to wrap up.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Well, are there any further questions that everyone may have or anyone may have? If so, we can entertain that now. Certainly want to thank Brad for moderating and putting this meeting together. And I think the next one is going to be what, sometime in
March 3rd. March 3rd. Yep.
Okay. Okay, well, like I said earlier, this will be my last State Tech Committee with you guys. And